Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We still have a few people arriving. You'll find your seats. Again, good morning, and it's so nice to see you. My name is Lilene Fifield, and I am your service leader for today. Is that a little better? I will welcome as much feedback as you want to give me, because in all honesty, I'm a little nervous. This is the first time I've got to stand up here and look at people in over 2 years. So that is truly a joy, and it's also making me a little shy. But welcome, welcome, welcome. Our presenter for today is Robert Heilman, an award-winning author and welcome speaker known for his many thoughtful, stimulating, published articles. His topic for today is most meaningful and significant in this current social, political, spiritual climate. He speaks today on anger and love in the time of COVID. There'll be additional time with Mr. Heilman after the service as you visit the book table set up in the back of the room where he will be. If you are new to Umpqua Unitarian Services, know that you're most welcome. Welcome, welcome. And if you're here for the first time, it's good to see you. And if you're visiting us for the first time online, we're really glad to have you. And we hope that you enjoy not only our service, but the many other special events that the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist community will be bringing to you during the coming year. We have a commitment to COVID-safe space, virus-safe space, so everyone here follows the protocol of being vaccinated and, for now, masked. If you're not able to do that, then check with us, please, through YouTube and join us. Much appreciation goes to our staff and our committees, and certainly the Sunday services crew of Jake Tranter and Sean Shea, who are helping us with all of this media and music. And if indeed you want to stay even more connected to us, check out our website. Get us your email address if we do not already have it. Call each other on the telephone and send messages to each other on Facebook. We want to be connected together. I want to remind you of an event coming up this coming Thursday. Originally, we were going to begin this service with Judy Fiel, who is a Unitarian music director in her own Big Sky community. And she will be here in concert, and she was going to be doing a presentation instrumentally of Spirit of Life while everyone was being seated. And if it's possible, we may try to do that in the end. But we wanted to remind you, even though she's been here many times, of her liveliness and her music, and in hopes that you'll come join us. We still have a few seats left on Thursday. So again, we begin each service by lighting our chalice. And I'm going to do that, and we have a few words to share. Chalice is a symbol of our faith, and our words today are by Erica Heller. And she writes, "Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason. It is the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, and the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life." I have some opening words with which I'd like to also begin our service, and they're written by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross many years ago, and so relevant today. She says, "I never met a person whose greatest need was anything other than real, unconditional love. You can find it in a simple act of kindness towards someone who needs help, and there's no mistaking love. You feel it in your heart. It is the common fiber of life, the flame that heals our spirit and our soul. It energizes our spirit and supplies passion to our lives. It is our connection to creation, God, to each other." We're going to change the usual order of service just a little bit today and move into kind of a calming, relaxing time. We have some exciting things to share with you. So let yourself sit back and relax and maybe take a few nice deep breaths. And as you breathe in slowly, think calm. Calm my mind. And as you breathe out, think relax. In, calm, out, relax. We're going to begin now a meditation video by Peter Mayer entitled Japanese Bowl. And just allow yourself to flow with the music. And if you're inclined, you will find on the screen some images.
I'm like one of those Japanese bowls that were made long ago. I have some cracks in me. They have been filled with gold. That's what they used back then, when they had a bowl to mend. It did not hide the cracks, it made them shine instead. So now Every old scar shows from every time I broke, and anyone's eyes can see I'm not what I used to be. But in a collector's mind, all of these jagged lines make me more beautiful and worth a much higher price. I'm like one of those Japanese bowls I was made long ago. I have some cracks, you can see how they shine of gold.
And when you're ready, allow yourself to come back into the room and rejoin us. I have another video to share with you, another part of our service for today. I was hoping we'd have our children back this morning, but what you're about to see is really a story for all ages. It is a book written recently by the Poet Laureate of the United States, a young woman named Amanda Gorman, and this video is entitled Change Sings. It's also out in a beautiful, beautiful book and would make a wonderful gift for any child of any age. So please enjoy Change Sings.
Book readings with Miss Bernard. Well, hello, friends. And today's story is Change Sings, a children's anthem. Words by New York Times best-selling author Amanda Gorman. Pictures by New York Times best-selling illustrator Lauren Long. Change sings. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. Friends, do you know who that is? That's Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances, from where and how we came. I also also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside me. Because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the waves starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? The end. What a lovely story of change and hope. All right, thank you for listening to another Book Readings with Miss Bernard. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I do, and I hope you'll put it on that list for children and grandchildren in days to come. A lot of today, both here inside our congregation and outside in our community and in the world, we are about change that is needed, and we are about change that is happening. And we are about change that must happen. So some of what we're doing today is, of course, of that theme and leading up eventually to what Robert Heilman will be talking with you about. However, before we do that, normally this would be the time in our service where we would be collecting pledges and donations. However, in order to again stay safe and not be passing collection baskets around, we ask that when you have a chance, in the back of the room, under the area where all the membership identification badges hang to remind us of all the people we love and all the people and things we support, you will find a pledge box and a collection box for your donation. So please do feel free to drop that in. At this point, it's a time for congregational sharing. We call it a Wheel of Life. It's an opportunity for those of you who would like to share something that's important in your life now, perhaps a joy or a concern. I have some candles to light and a microphone if your sharing is going to be out loud. And I'm going to ask, if you have some sharing to do, that we start with this side of the room first and just make a line across the front here. And we will be lighting candles here from the light in the sandbox. And if you choose to share out loud, I'll have the microphone. And if not, we'll hold a moment with you. So if you'd like to share, please join us now.
Good morning. My name is June Irvin. I'm getting directions from the audience. As I do every year, I always bring daffodils in memory of a dear friend of many of us. We lost her 7 years ago in March. Her name was Jan Fritz. She was very active in our church and beloved by all of us.
I'm Gemma Cray, and I hope you've noticed the paintings on the walls. Our UU Art Committee has hung them a couple of weeks ago, and they are paintings by Lisa Hubbard, who's our chair. And I want to make a point that we're working hard to make this place beautiful. And I love these paintings because they're so happy and they're joyful and they have a lot of color. So please enjoy them.
So if you're sitting out there watching us on YouTube and you want to see what this artwork looks like and you are vaccinated, come join us. Anyone else from that side? How about if we start with this side of the room then?
I'm Jaycee Pratt, and I was very moved and giggly about the Japanese bowls. And I thought to myself, I'm going to find a bowl that needs fixing or has been fixed and have that be my home altar center. I know the flame is the flame, but the cracked bowl is us. Thank you.
I discovered that video the day before my 80th birthday. Anyone else?
Bob Honey here. I'm an old-time member. I haven't been here for a while. It's so great to be back to Unitarian Church. Thanks for everybody who puts this together. It's great to be here. I want to relate a candle for two wise souls that we've lost recently. And the first one would be our dear friend Larry Flanagan, who gave lots of sermons and talks here. And I met Larry in 1980 and just was a dear friend right to the very end. And yeah, I got lots of stories about Larry. He was really one of the wise people of the community. And we're also lucky to have lived here and known Larry. He really meant a lot to me, helped me out as another human being. The other dear friend that was my adopted grandfather was Frank Moore, who just passed away. And that's a tough one here. And God bless Frank. What an unbelievable, beautiful person. And I think we're also enriched to have known Frank and his love for the earth, his love for his dear wife Jeannie for 79 years. So I want to light a candle for both of those wise people. And it just makes me realize how important mentors. I never knew mentors would mean so much to me, but those two have been huge mentors for me, and they've meant a lot to me and have really helped me out.
Here she comes. Either way, whichever's easier.
I'm Betsy Walters, and I'm going to light a candle to remind us that we have to get this war over with, because Russia and Ukraine grow about 2/3 of the world's grain, and without that grain, we're going to have a hell of a famine. So we've got to get it going.
I'm lighting an extra candle for any of those joys or concerns that you may be sitting with, that you're holding in your heart. And in a moment, I'm going to light another candle. And that candle is for the country of Ukraine. And we have a song to sing for a moment. Spirit of Life, and I hope our choir will help us with that. And following that, you'll be shown an anthem video, which is the anthem of Ukraine. And for that video, I will be lighting a candle. And I hope you'll stand if you are able.
Quiet.
It's time for church.
Thank you so much. For those of you who will be watching the Judy Fiel concert on YouTube, live streaming, there will be information on where you might send donations if you are able to the Ukrainian Relief Fund, and the information for doing that. There is no charge at all for watching that concert online. And if you're attending in person, you're likely to see me with a bucket. It is 7 o'clock Thursday, thank you. 7 o'clock Thursday, vaccination and masks required. Okay, a little change now, a little energy coming up here. I'm very excited and with great pleasure welcoming Robert Heilman. Yes, he is an award-winning author. He hails from Myrtle Creek, and he loves and he writes about Oregon. He's also a brilliant essay writer and a thought-provoking columnist whose work regularly stimulates and impacts conversations within our community. And he will be sharing some of that work with you that he has been doing in the last 2 years. And after that sharing, there'll be some discussion. So please welcome Robert Heilman.
Beards, what are you going to do? Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I just turned 70, and I had to increase the size of the print to make sure I'd be able to read this to you folks. Yeah, I'm Robert Heilman. This is my third reading here for the Umpqua Unitarians. It's actually my fifth reading for Unitarians, since I also read in Grants Pass and Klamath Falls. It occurred to me on the way up here that no other church has ever asked me to speak to them. And I'm not sure what that says about Unitarians exactly, but I suppose it means they have excellent taste in literature. Lillian called me, I don't know, when was that? January, I guess it was, or early February, and asked me to come speak. And of course I accepted. And then a few weeks ago, she called up to find out what it was I was going to talk about, which was kind of an embarrassing thing because I had no idea at that point, but I figured I had to come up with something. So I thought I would share with you two pieces that I wrote last year in 2020. The first is a column that I did for the News Review. Most people here in this county probably know me as a columnist. That guy who has these things in the paper once in a while. But I'm also an essayist, and outside of Douglas County, that's mostly what I'm known for, is my literary nonfiction work. I am an author. I've written 3 books of literary nonfiction. So. This first piece came out in about the middle of May last year. It was in the News Review. And it's called Of Tyrants and Tyranny. The first time that I heard the Tea Party anti-taxation slogan, "Taxation is Tyranny," back in 2010, my mind immediately turned to the Holodomor. 90 years ago and half a world away, during the winter of 1931 to 32, the Soviet government brought a famine to Ukraine, in which it is estimated that 25% of the country's rural population starved to death. Millions of tons of grain were confiscated and sold off to Western, I didn't think this would be this tough. Millions of tons of grain were confiscated and sold off to Western European countries for the foreign cash that the government needed, while millions of people painfully perished from governmental indifference. Tens of thousands of those who spoke out against the government's cruelty were sent to the Siberian Gulag prison camps and were never heard from again, having been worked to death as slave labor. One of those prisoners who eventually survived left a poem about life in the labor camps, which begins with, forced to forsake our homes, stalked by relentless death, we trudged the ice-cold roads and ate our grief-soaked bread. It seems that I have a somewhat different appreciation of what constitutes genuine tyranny than some of my neighbors who have recently formed a small group called Citizens Against Tyranny in opposition to having COVID-19 restrictions decreasing their business profit margins. They are not alone in their resentment. COVID-19 restriction protesters in Germany have taken to wearing Nazi-era-style Yellow Star of David armbands with the word ungeimpft, meaning unvaccinated, replacing the word Juden to express their sense of grievance. The Citizens Against, it seems, are also not alone in exaggerating their sense of oppression. Words can be deceptive, whether we are using them to fool ourselves or they are being used by demagogues to fool us. The adolescent who resents the tyranny of doing homework and household chores feels oppressed, as does the libertarian extremist who resents the tyranny of having to pay taxes. But though the resentment itself is genuine in both cases, the feelings of victimhood for both of them are pitifully exaggerated ones. It is truly sad to see my neighbors suffer, whether from the rampant disease itself or from the government's attempts to stem the pandemic. In both ways, the harm that comes to them is real. It's immediate and serious. It may be, perhaps, that some of the restrictions really have been too strict or even unnecessary, though it is certainly too soon to know that. What is certain is that harsh words, alarmism, and lies will not help any one of us to heal our own lives or our community. The simple facts are that COVID-19 restrictions are not the Holocaust. The pandemic is not the Holodomor, and despite what you may hear from some politicians, Oregon Governor Kate Brown is neither Hitler nor a Stalin. We all must face the reality that having to wear a mask or not being able to sit on a bar stool with a beer in hand is not the same harm, morally or physically, as sending trainloads of people to the gas chambers or bringing slow death by starvation to millions of helpless people. Words are dangerous. Overblown words can easily lead to overblown reactions, as we saw in the January 6th MAGA riot in Washington, D.C., and the harm that they cause can last long after those who first spoke them are long forgotten. Throughout history, those who were called tyrants by some were thought of as heroes by others. Perhaps we should bear in mind that John Wilkes Booth President Abraham Lincoln's assassin, shouted "Sic semper tyrannis" after ending the life of a truly great man. We must not fool ourselves into excessive anger with our words, and we cannot let the bluster of others fool us into expressing hatred for each other. Perhaps we should fear our words rather than fearing our neighbors. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. I suppose most of you probably do too. We lost a lot of family over there in Ukraine back during the 1930s because of Stalin and such. So, when I started doing research on my family for my book, Children of Death, one of the very first things I ran across was a note from the Deutsches Auslandinstitut in Stuttgart, and it read, Magdalena Heilmann, Dorfelsas, Odessa, Mann nach Sibirien vertrieben, 9 Kinder, 4 davon verhungert. That means Magdalena Heilmann in the village of Elsass, Odessa district. Husband exiled to Siberia, 9 children. 4 died of hunger. So, by the way, if any of you have the time, there is a small sidewalk demonstration every Sunday at noon out in front of Fred Meyer's there on Garden Valley of people who wish to support the Ukrainian people. And it is very small. And I would really love it if some of you would join me there today. So June of last year, I sold an essay to the Daily Yonder, which is a lovely online magazine out of Whitesburg, Kentucky, that specializes in rural matters. It's put out by the Rural Strategies Center, or Center for Rural Strategies, or whatever. But anyway, they actually care about country folk, which is really unusual. And they pay money, which is even more unusual, to their contributors. So, as a result of having published for the edification of my neighbors that column about the use of language, what I'm talking about here in this essay is what occurred as a result. It's called Broken Glass, Broken Trust. A .22 caliber bullet came through our dining room window, passed through our dining room wall, and out into our bedroom early in the dark morning hours of a Memorial Day. My first assumption was that it was done deliberately as an act of intimidation. Given the circumstances, it was a natural suspicion to have. I am a writer, and I live in Douglas County, Oregon, which calls itself the 100 Valleys of the Umpqua, and takes pride in proclaiming itself the timber capital of the nation. It is a place that has a fulsome history of politically motivated vandalism and harassment, and these are particularly dark times in which to be publicly expressing controversial opinions. My most recent column of Tyrants and Tyranny had pointed to both the dangers and the absurdity of using extreme rhetoric. And I have learned over the years that if I write about fear and anger, the fearful people will get angry with me. We called the sheriff's office and had a deputy come out, cleaned up the glass and filed the insurance claim, and eventually we're told that the most likely explanation was that the slug had ricocheted through our window. No shot had been heard. A 22-round can travel a long way before it strikes anything, and people squeezing off random shots does happen sometimes in the countryside around here, where poachers spotlight deer in the dead of night. That it passed through our house along a line running from the top of our driveway along the road could have been a coincidence after all, and the elevation of it seemed higher than what you might expect from someone leaning out of a vehicle window for a downhill pot shot. It was a comforting conclusion. 2 weeks later, at 3 a.m, it was a rock that shattered the same glass window and landed on our dining room floor. It was thrown hard enough to cross the room, strike a chair on the far side of our old oak table, and bounce off under the table. I jumped out of bed, ran to the dining room, and this time heard a car drive off. Once again, we had police in our house asking whether I had any beef with my neighbors, and once again the tinkling broom and dustpan sound from cleaning up shards of broken glass. This time the intent was unmistakable. Someone obviously wants me afraid. It's a sobering thought to realize that I am currently the object of someone's fear and hatred. People don't hate what they don't fear. Mostly I find what people hate most in others is what they fear in themselves. I am not fearless, but though I do fear fearful people, I do not hate them. My feelings are almost always more likely to turn to pity and sadness than to disdain and anger when I come across disagreeable notions. But now, a new fear confronts me. Fearing for the safety of those I love. My wife and her elderly mother. Because it is not just myself being attacked, but my family and my home as well. Hamlet-like, I pondered whether to speak out publicly about what is happening here in my home, on the land that I've lived on for the past 43 years. I am a writer and have been for decades now. My columns and commentaries have been distributed locally, regionally, and nationally, in print and on the air. I write because it's my natural inclination to reach out to others, to make the cry of some lonely human being sent out into the world till it reaches the ears of another lonely human being who is moved to answer it. That's a quote from Goethe, by the way. To speak up or not to speak up, that was the question, or at least one of many questions that came to me in rapid-fire, uneasy ways. So much is unknown and unknowable about these two attacks, which is, if it is not the point of the attack or the strategy used, what makes this so hard to bear? I wish that I knew who did this and why it was done. I wish I could determine whether it is the result of cold calculation or unhinged rage. Some of my neighbors have taken to proposing the necessity of waging a civil war. Have we become victims of that longing for civil unrest, early casualties in a newly begun insurrection? Is this the work of someone driven mad by the sort of overwrought talk that I warned about in my column? There is no way of knowing, only uncertainty as dark as our lawn at 3 in the morning. The first of the 40 columns that I have written for our daily newspaper came out on November 13th, 1990. It was written in response to the revelation that several local environmental activists had been receiving death threats and personal attacks from timber industry supporters here in the timber capital of the nation. I waited for 2 weeks following the newspaper accounts, which appeared in the Oregonian first and then the News Review. The only public statement that came out was in the form of a letter to the editor of the News Review, in which one of the victims, Gene Lawhorn, was denounced as a traitor who deserved what had happened to him. It seemed odd to me back then that no one else had commented on the story. Not one local politician, judge, law enforcement officer, preacher, teacher, or editor was willing to speak out against politically motivated harassment. I quote now from that original column from 1990. Tolerance used to be a hallmark of life here in the 100 Valleys of the Umpqua. But now we have become the land of the anonymous death threat, the window broken in the night, the job lost because of political beliefs, and the whispered accusation that turns neighbor against neighbor, a cowardly land of us and them. It is a shameful way of life, and one we all bear responsibility for. We have killed our hearts because we found pain there, the pain of hard choices. What we have left now is something inhuman and heartless. We have learned to hate one another. Because we could not trust ourselves to love, we have given in to fear. Over the past 31 years, I've remained the only Umpquan to publicly say that neighbors shouldn't threaten violence against each other over their political differences. Over those years, many of my neighbors have thanked me for the columns that I wrote for the local paper, and then, too often, went on to tell me about their fear of speaking out publicly. The risk has always seemed small to me, just a necessary trade-off between the risk of being disliked and the certainty of despising myself for my silence. It just never occurred to me that by sharing my thoughts about our lives here, I might be endangering those whom I love too. On October 4th, 1980, I fell from a ladder while working as a roofer, a fall that landed me in a wilderness of fear and resentment. The injury was physically painful, what amounted to a severe whiplash injury. But the experience of going through the workers' compensation system damaged me worse than the chronic pain in my neck and shoulders. My employer underreported my earnings to his insurance company, made an illegal deduction from my last paycheck, claimed that I was drawing compensation while working at another job, and fired me while I was still laid up. My claim also became caught up in a dispute between two insurance companies, neither of which sent any payments for several months while the dispute dragged on. Stuck at home, while living in pain and being unable to provide for my wife and son, I became depressed and angry. I began to fantasize about taking violent revenge, imagining demanding justice at gunpoint, and contemplating the means of shooting out an insurance company's windows in the dead of night. I felt trapped, unable to escape either the chronic pain of my body or my legal troubles. I spent some months writing a bitter one-act play in which a hapless injured worker held everyone at his hearing hostage at gunpoint in order to assert his humanity. Nothing Personal was the title of it. At the end, the hero X turned the gun on himself as police sirens wailed outside. 30 years later, I found the yellowing old script in a dusty cardboard box and fed the pages one by one into my wood burner. Trapped. Of course, the shooter feels trapped, but by what? I've met many extremists over the years, both on a casual level and as part of my writing work, and it's always seemed to me that whatever injustices they are telling me about are not really what has driven them to embrace their cause. Something as abstract as an ideology couldn't produce the visceral hatred necessary to putting a bullet through your neighbor's window or for storming the nation's capital. At heart, the extremist feels loss. A loss of pride, a loss of comfort, a loss of identity, a loss of a dream of longed-for success in love and in life. Perhaps it has been there all along, from childhood and lifelong into old age. Perhaps it came suddenly as an unexpected trouble in the midst of contentment, a shock that drives someone relentlessly inward with surly thoughts running in ever-narrowing circles. It is through the search for a way out of the trap that ideology offers itself as an explanation for the fear brought on by soul-crushing loss. It is ideology that provides a justification for desperate actions that promise release. In the use of violence, that promise is one of immediacy, the lure of one quick, final act to end all torment and bring the hoped-for restoration, an end to pain. In 1989, during the so-called timber wars, over whether or not to list the northern spotted owl as an endangered species, copies of the Douglas Timber Operators magazine were sent out to thousands of local mill workers, loggers, and truck drivers. The cover featured Portland timber industry lawyer Mark Rutzik standing in front of a mill log deck. Above the lawyer was the title of Counselor Rutzik's essay, "You Have Enemies Who Want to Destroy You." It was a claim that was echoed at pro-timber rallies for several years afterward by one of our county commissioners. Those who lead lost souls to commit terrorism in the name of ideology or personal gain are, of course, to be blamed more than those who have been led astray. And yet, the demagogues among us are seldom held accountable for the actions of their followers. In Dante Alighieri's The Inferno, the fomenters of discord occupy the 8th of the 9 rings of hell, along with the false counselors and falsifiers, while the wrathful and sullen are assigned to the 5th circle with its less severe punishments. And by the way, the fornicators are like up around the 2nd or 3rd. So if you're going to sin, choose your sins wisely, I say. In Dante's hell, unlike here on earth, the punishments are always just ones, and all who are punished are always guilty of having committed their transgressions. Taught by politicians and public relations hacks to accept the habit of angry speech, the people here are much less likely now to respect the wise admonition that circumstances alter cusses. A local fellow has taken to driving around town in his Jeep, mounting a large sign that bluntly says, "Fuck you, Kate Brown." Ms. Brown, the much maligned Oregon governor, was recently featured on a photocopied wanted poster, which was posted on telephone poles in several local small towns, accusing her of, and I quote, "crimes against the people of Oregon, including betrayal of her oath of office and treason against the United States of America." The newspaper cartoon character Calvin, I see, has been peeing on Joe Biden in pickup truck rear windows lately. Like many rural places, ours has become attractive to a hodgepodge of survivalists, white supremacists, anti-taxation, sovereign citizenship proponents, and others who have left their increasingly liberal suburban neighborhoods to come to a place where they hope to feel more comfortable living among others who never challenge their beliefs. As a result of these trends, our county has become an increasingly bitter conservative pocket in an overwhelmingly liberal voting state. What is most troubling to me about these extremists is not the broken glass, both here in my home and in Washington, D.C., but the broken trust in each other and in our democracy that such fear inevitably brings. The price of fearfulness is either the hard struggle to accept uncertainty as the cost of living in an open society or the death of openness in our society, I wrote in that first local newspaper column 31 years ago. Well, thank you. My grandfather, Lawrence Heilmann, was born in Ukraine in 1886. That's my dad's dad. And my grandmother, Maria Eva Keller, was born there in 1900. And I visited Ukraine in 1996. I spent a week in Odessa, a city which hasn't been bombed yet, but may very well soon be bombed. And so my heart goes out to those people, because hell, they got it even worse than we do. Okay, so anybody want to argue with me about any of this, or arm wrestle? Yes, sir.
Just a comment. When we were in the midst of the Cold War, the Soviet Union then tried to force the Hungarians to stay in line, and we got our backs up about that. I think because we were afraid of nuclear war. And I remember my uncle, when I was a child in Amarillo, Texas, was actually hosting Hungarian refugees coming into that community. Mm-hmm. And that kind of stuck with me, because nothing like that happened again till maybe Vietnam. But 8 years ago, it was kind of interesting that the Soviets, or actually the Russians by then, invaded Georgia, which had an American Georgian president. He was raised in America, and he asked the world for help. And most people didn't care, didn't know, didn't want to know. And a third of Georgia got eaten up. And that was kind of curious. We didn't really worry all that much about it, because that was far away, small country. But now, all of a sudden, we've all developed an acute fascination with the Ukraine. And I was wondering why, because even the Trump Republicans have come in on the side of Ukraine, and only the furthest extremists that are editorializing on Fox still hold on to conspiracy theories that it's all our fault. Most people in the United States have united in supporting the Ukraine's effort. And I feel a sense of relief over that, because it's the first time we've come together in a very long time. And I just hope it's a sign that maybe in the future, instead of fighting each other in a civil war, which everybody was warning us about, that maybe we'll find other reasons to come together again and start putting aside these trivial differences and false conspiracy theories, and realize that at the heart of it, we are actually all Americans, and we should care about other people.
Yes. Yes, you're correct that there was a revolt against the Soviet powers in Hungary in 1956, I think it was, 57. And yeah, they were crushed, as were the people in what was then Czechoslovakia in Prague, the Prague Spring in 1968. And in Georgia, the difference as far as what Russia did to Chechnya and Georgia seems to be one of proximity, and perhaps a bit racism in the case of the Chechnyans, who are from Central Asia, and therefore less like the people who are sitting in this room for the most part. But yes, it's tragic. Yes, ma'am?
I'm going to stand just because we don't have a microphone. Okay. Unfortunately, the hearing aids come off and everything. Just because you started out asking why you're being asked to talk to Unitarians and why you get applause when you talk to Unitarians, I'm actually pretty well known in this community as someone who has really been trying to love people outwardly, openly. But I do have this one thing that I carry around that keeps me quiet, and that is, how angry do you have to get at me for my point of view before you shoot me? And I happen to think that's a valid question to ask myself in this community. And that's really scary. That's why we come here.
Yes, it is. Mr. Honey.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, for doing this, and all you've done in the community since you've been here. I really look up to you as a wise man of the community. I grew up on a farm and sheared sheep and hunted, fished, and trapped, and so I always kind of seen both sides of the different issues when it comes to the timber and so forth. And over your writings over the years, I've noticed that you have always, in my opinion, been very fair about the different sides of all that and have expressed that. And so I just wanted to say that to you, Bob. But when it comes to the fear, I told you on the phone a few days ago that I had a death threat on my phone back when I was the president of watersheds or whatever. So I've experienced that a little bit, not like you have. But you know, the fear is real. But when I get quiet and talk to myself, I think about my two grandfathers who fought the Nazis in World War II, who I never met. And I feel it's a disrespect to them for me not to speak up. They died for me to have freedom of speech to speak up. And I'll be damned if anybody's going to keep me from speaking up. I want to encourage people, like the Ukrainians are doing, for us all to speak up the truth as we see it.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. You know, fear is natural. Hatred is a choice. And it's something to think about, you know, that because it is, as I pointed out here, you know, even anger to a certain extent is understandable, but how you deal with it is very important, you know, and if you are projecting onto other people your frustration, your anger, you're looking to somebody else for the source of your being upset, you should really be sure you take a look at yourself and ask yourself, why am I upset, you know? Because that is a choice, you know. So often these things, as I mentioned in the essay part, fill me with sadness and pity. You know, I really do feel sorry for anybody who's afraid, because I do know what fear is. And I know what frustration is. I know what poverty is. You know, I've lived these things in my life. And so I do get upset, particularly with people I know who are of the liberal bent, and yet are still engaging in expressions of disdain for the opposition and such. There's a friend of mine who's a well-known writer here in Oregon, and we're Facebook friends, if you want to, But in one of her comments on the post, I saw that she was calling Trump supporters subhuman. Well, I had to send her a note saying, really, really bad things happen when you start talking about subhumans. Okay, the German word for that is Untermenschen, and those were the people who were stuffed into ovens there at Auschwitz. So it's a very, very dangerous thing to not acknowledge the basic underlying humanity of people. Okay, yeah, okay, maybe you think they're idiots, maybe you think they're whatever, but at least acknowledge that and try to catch yourself in the act of it too. If you have the urge to badmouth an entire class of people, an entire section of humanity, try to catch yourself in the act and stop and say to yourself, wait a minute, wait a minute, we've got these a big anti-gay thing going on right now, laws and such in Florida and all of this, and against trans people and woke people. I mean, what was that? I don't even know what that means exactly, but a friend of mine was complaining this morning about Disney Channel for children. They've got, I guess, apparently there's a Disney Channel expressly for children. He was talking about it's just a bunch of woke indoctrination, Yes. But it's really not a good thing. Okay, to begin with, there are no actual categories of anyone or anything for that matter. Okay, that's just a way that we fool ourselves with words. Okay, we are all individuals. We all are making our own ways through life, and we need to bear that in mind. Okay. So if you feel yourself part of one faction or another, you should especially be ready to speak up and try to correct those who agree with you. Okay? Because you have no control over the opposition, right? But at least within your own clique, your own ideology, within your own social circle, you do have some power. You can chide each other a bit and say, please don't do this, and this is the path of peace. So, thank you.
Thank you, my dear friend. Just a quick reminder, I know we have lots of feelings and reactions, and Robert's not going away, so hang around after the service and you'll have a chance to talk a little more with him. And let's hear now from Sean Shea.
So I'd like a chance to respond also. And I'm going to choose to do so in the form of song, because that's what I do. And it's what I can do. But whatever we can do, we must do. And this song actually came out of the anguish and grief and rage and wondering, what can I do in response to another tragedy, which we have all shared. But it's not the particulars of the tragedy that are important, but rather the search for a way to respond compassionately. And the song is called Strength and Compassion. I'll just read to you the lyrics of the chorus rather than the whole thing. But what can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. When I take a look around, I see the world turned upside down. I see brothers being brutal to their brothers. Where is the love that we should have for one another? Now I hope and pray that we may see a brighter day, and may our children grow up free of fear and hatred, and help create a world where all of life is sacred. What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. In a world torn apart, if we can keep a tender heart and see each other with forgiveness and compassion, from our loving hearts will spring forth loving action. And so with faith and trust in that of God in all of us, let's offer a helping hand to serve a higher purpose. We'll find that our hearts are filled with peace through loving service. What can I do, my brother, to respond to the madness? What can I say, my sister, to ease the pain? How can I help to heal a world that's so torn to pieces? Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today. Give me the strength and compassion, Lord, to give your love today.
We on your Sunday Services Committee work tirelessly to try to bring together coordinated services that will really speak to us, to each other, and to that larger world. I am very grateful, Robert, for your words today and all of the thinking you've encouraged, and it was a pleasure to work the service around your words. And I'm very grateful for all of you who have come, and I hope you'll stay and continue your discussions with Robert afterwards. We close our services by extinguishing the chalice I lit earlier with some closing words. And in my life, as a lifelong activist, I've learned one thing to deal with that fear, and that is having faith. Just faith that I'm right in the world and it's not my time. So I offer to all of you this. The world aches for us to join together and bring about healing, toil for justice, and practice ever-increasing love. This is our calling, and let us go forth and walk softly, speak truthfully, love gently, breathe deeply, live wisely, and stand up in peace. We close with Go Lift It Up and staying for Robert Heilman.